Welcome to the Tulip Christian Church podcast, where we hope to inspire and strengthen your relationship in Jesus Christ. We encourage you to love Jesus and love people. Now, let's get to this week's sermon.
Amen. Kind of similar. We're going to be staying in this theme of Matthew 10. If you see the headline for the sermon today, it's called Dead Pandas. And I'll kind of explain that in a second. I went on this conference, this retreat in Indiana, and it was all based on discipleship. And there were probably a few thousand people there. It was really large. And while we were there, I saw like 40 dudes dressed up in Waldo suits, right? I thought Waldo was supposed to be hard to find, but that was not the case. It was like the exact opposite. It was the worst game of Waldo I've ever played. And so I found one of the guys, and I'm like, hey, why are you dressed up as Waldo? Like, what are you doing? And he's like, well, come to my class and you'll find out. And I was like, all right, got me. I guess you win. Reverse Waldo, okay? So I went to their class, right? And they had like main sessions where there was a preacher there. You know, we did worship, but they also had breakout sessions. And so that's where these classes would happen. And so as I went to this guy's class, there were so many dudes in there dressed like Waldo. And it just blew my mind. And I never really understood why. They never explained the Waldo thing, so that's kind of a dead end. Sorry, I wish I had an explanation for that, but you know, I asked why, and they're like, well, come to my class. I was like, okay, maybe this is just a silly thing to get people to show up. But I was in there, and the keynote speaker came up to the front of the classroom and was like, what's black and white with red all over? And I was like, oh, I know this, right? Some people said newspaper, right? I was like, yeah, that seems pretty good. Some people said zebra with a sunburn, right? And that's like the classic one, right? I was thinking, I don't know, the New Testament, like, right? Or even the Old Testament, right? The Gospels, right? Black, white, red all over, right? Red letters. And he says, no, a dead panda. And I was like, there's nowhere to go, like, from here. Like, how are you going to make sense of this? A dead panda, of all things. And I was like, it's kind of a sick joke to start with. And so I was like, I was sitting in the back because I was already sketched out by the 40 Waldos sitting in the room. And I was like, maybe I'll bail out. But then he made sense of it, right? And so today we're going to talk about that, right? No dead pandas. We don't want dead pandas. Okay? We do not want dead pandas. And so we're in this series of Gone Fishing, right? Practical pathways to discipleship. Right? And the first week we talked about becoming an angler, right? Becoming a fisher of men, right? Becoming a disciple maker. And then we moved into how we need to stay on the dock, right? And disciple our family first. And then last week we talked about the concept of 3 verses 9 and how we have two close people with us, pouring into us, right? Recharging us, right? Pouring into them, recharging them, so we can continue this concept of discipleship. And today we're talking about dead pandas. It seems so silly, but it's going to make sense. And I'm doing like the cardinal sin of preaching. I'm bookending this, okay? I'm not going to explain this until the end. So if you missed the whole sermon, I'm so sorry. It'll be like 5 minutes, okay? So we'll get back to it rather quickly, all right? So once I get my notes here, we're going to be in Matthew 10 all day, the whole chapter. And to set this up, before we get into Jesus sending out the 12 disciples, right? Jesus has been traveling around Galilee, teaching in synagogues, preaching the good news of the kingdom, healing the people with diseases and sicknesses, right? And as he traveled, he saw large crowds of people who were just troubled and helpless, right? Like sheep without a shepherd. And feeling compassion for them, Jesus realized this task ahead, and he told his disciples this, that the harvest was plentiful, but the laborers were few. And he instructed them to pray to the Lord, right? Of the harvest, right? To send out more workers into this harvest field, right? Maybe I should have renamed this to the harvest, but dead pandas is so catchy, right? This kind of sets the scene for Jesus selecting and commissioning his 12 disciples to go out and continue his work. And so I'm going to start with Matthew 10:1. Jesus called his 12 disciples to him and gave them authority to drive out impure spirits and to heal every disease and sickness. These are the name of the 12 apostles. First Simon, who was called Peter, and his brother Andrew, James, the son of Zebedee, and his brother John, Philip, and Bartholomew, Thomas, Matthew the tax collector, James the son of Alphaeus, and Thaddeus, Simon the zealot, and Judas Iscariot, who betrayed him. So Matthew 10:1-4, right? Jesus gathers his 12 disciples, right? And he gives them the authority over unclean spirits, right? To cast them out, to heal sicknesses. Then he calls his 12, right? And he sends them out, right? So this sets the stage for this impossible mission, right? Sets the stage for that, kind of like what we've been talking about already this morning, right? This is kind of the introduction, what we're getting into, about the 12 who are selected and commissioned by Jesus to extend his ministry. So back to verse 5. These 12 Jesus sent them out with these following instructions. Do not go among the Gentiles or any towns of the Samaritans. Go rather to the lost sheep of Israel. As you go, proclaim this message. The kingdom of heaven has come near. Heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse those who have leprosy, drive out demons. Freely you have received, freely give. Do not let any gold or silver or copper to take with you in your belts, no bag for the journey, no extra shirt, sandals, or a staff for the workers is worth his keep. So not only does he send them out, he sends them out with nothing. Right? It's like going on a vacation, and so you board your plane, right? You check your bag, you get to where you're going, and your bag does not. Okay? That would be kind of stressful, right? In many of ways, right? Now you got to buy a new toothbrush. Okay? That's stressful, right? Now you don't have clean underwear for a week, right? That's stressful, right? But he sends them out and he's like, hey, go. Here we go. Let's do this thing, right? But it focuses on this mission, on the Israelites, and highlights this dependence on God's provision, right? It's like, you're going to be taken care of. You don't need to pack up a bunch of stuff and go. God's going to provide, right? He's going to show up for you. He's going to be there with you, right? And he was urging them to travel light, to trust the hospitality of those that they serve. Verse 11. Whatever town or village you enter, search there for some worthy person and stay at their house until you leave. As you enter the home, give it your greeting. If the home is deserving, let your peace rest on it. If it is not, let your peace return to you. If anyone will not welcome you or listen to your words, leave that town or home and shake the dust off of your feet. Truly I tell you, it will be more bearable for Sodom and Gomorrah on the day of judgment for that time. Jesus instructs these apostles on how they should conduct themselves when they enter a town. Right? Told them that, hey, if it's worth it, right? If you are making progress, stay. Right? Stay until they leave. Right? And when you enter the house, right, give them peace. Right? The word that they used for that was shalom. Right? And peace be with you. Right? So if anyone does not receive that, he's like, hey, leave and shake dust off their feet. This was like an Old Testament thing, right? Saying like, okay, I'm moving on. But Jesus assures them that it'd be more tolerable for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah on that day of judgment for that time, right? He warns them that he is sending them out as sheep amongst wolves. So they're talking about how important it is to discern, right? This offer of peace. And talked about the consequences of rejection, while also cautioning the apostles about the dangers that they will face. Verse 17, I am sending you out like sheep among wolves. Therefore, be as shrewd as the snakes and as innocent as doves. Be on your guard. You will be handed over to the local councils and be flogged in the synagogues. On my account, you will be brought before governors and kings as witnesses to them and to the Gentiles. But when they arrest you, do not worry about what to say or how to say it. At that time, you will be given what to say. For it will be you speaking, but the Spirit of your Father speaking through you. Now that sounds terrifying, right? Jesus warns them about the persecutions that they face, that they will face. And he tells them to beware of men, right? Because they'll be handed over to courts and flogged. Like, so not only are we being sent on a mission, right, without anything with us, now there's more elements, right? But the fear of rejection, right? The fear of persecution. It's going to be dangerous. You're going to get flogged, right? This does not sound like a fun vacation anymore, okay? This does not. Right? But what this is doing is this is preparing the apostles for the inevitable opposition that they'll encounter. Right? And he's assuring them of divine assistance. Right? He says, the Spirit of the Father will speak to you. There is some comfort in there. Right? Verse 21. Brother will betray brother to death, and a father his child. Children will rebel against their parents and have them put to death. You will be hated by everyone because of me. But the one who stands firm to the end will be saved. When you are persecuted in one place, flee to another. Truly I tell you, you will not finish going through the towns of Israel before the Son of Man comes. So Jesus continues to warn them, right, about this severe persecution. And he says, right, brother will betray brother, right? The father will betray his child, and then children will also rebel against their parents. So this is starting to sound worse and worse as we're reading this, right? And he even told them all nations will hate them because of Jesus' name. However, he does tell them to do this. Just stand firm. Right? Stand firm. And if you do, right, stand firm to the end, you'll be saved. Right? When they're persecuting you, right? In one place, go to the next place. Keep going, right? Time's running out. But Jesus assures them that they will not finish going through all the towns of Israel before the Son of Man comes. So this is still talking about the intense opposition and betrayal that these disciples will encounter. But he's also encouraging them to persevere, right, and remain steadfast in their faith with this promise of ultimate salvation. Verse 24. The student is not above the teacher, nor a servant is above his master. It is enough for students to be like their teachers, and servants like their masters. If the head of the house has been called usable, how much more the members of his household? So do not be afraid of them, for there is nothing concealed that will not be disclosed, or hidden that will not be made known. What I tell you in the dark, speak in the daylight. What is whispered in your ear, proclaim from the roof. Do not be afraid of those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. Rather, be afraid of the one who can destroy both soul and body in hell. Are not two sparrows sold for a penny? Yet not one of them will fall to the ground outside your Father's care. And even the very hairs of your head will all be numbered. So don't be afraid. You're worth more than many sparrows. Whoever acknowledges me before others, I will also acknowledge before my Father in heaven. But whoever disowns me before others, I will disown before my Father in heaven. Jesus is now giving them the pump-up speech. Right, this is the encouragement. Right, he's telling them that a student is not above the teacher. Right, he's telling them that a servant is not above his master. Right, it is enough for the student to be like his teacher, right, and the servant to be like his master. He's telling them to be like Jesus. Right, be like Jesus. When Jesus tells them, hey, what's said in the dark, talk about it in the daylight, right? What's whispered in the ear, talk. So he's telling them, like, go speak with confidence, go be bold. And he warns them, don't be afraid of those who kill the body. They can't kill the soul. Instead, fear the one who can destroy both soul and body, right? Jesus is assuring them that the hairs on their head are going to be numbered. So they shouldn't be afraid. He also gives them worth, talks about their worth, how they are worth more than sparrows. Right? But he also acknowledges his Father in heaven, like those to his Father in heaven. Right, so there's a great reward that comes with this. Right, he's encouraging the disciples to embrace their roles as followers of Jesus, even in the face of persecution. Right, and he's telling them to trust in God's care and ultimate judgment. Right, because it emphasizes the importance of openly acknowledging Jesus and not fearing earthly threats. Verse 34. Do not suppose that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to turn a man against his father, a daughter against his mother, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. A man's enemies will be members of his own household. Anyone who loves their father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. Anyone who loves their son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. Whoever does not take up their cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Whoever finds their life will lose it, and whoever loses their life for my sake will find it. Anyone who welcomes you welcomes me. And anyone who welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. Whoever welcomes a prophet as a prophet will receive a prophet's reward, and whoever welcomes a righteous person as a righteous person will receive the righteous person's reward. And if anyone gives a cup of cold water to those little ones, who is my disciples, truly I tell you, that person will certainly not lose their reward. Jesus is telling his disciples, right? He's like, hey, I'm not coming to bring peace. Right? Like Jesus is like, hey, we're going to war. We're going to battle here. Right? He also says that he's talking about rewards, right? And life, and those who try to save their lives will lose it, right? But those who sacrifice theirs for Jesus will save it. Right? He's talking about the nature of following Jesus and the need for radical commitment. And there's a reward for those who welcome and support his disciples. It highlights that loyalty to Jesus may come at the cost of family relationships. He talks about how following Jesus will come at the cost of persecution, of opposition, right? But he promises a great reward to those who remain faithful. So our key takeaway from Matthew 10 today is this call to courageous and unwavering commitment to Jesus, even in the face of opposition, right? And it's going to cost you a lot, right? This isn't a quiche mission. This isn't a soft vacation, guys. We're going to battle daily. We're going to battle daily, right? And we got to commit to Jesus even in the face of opposition. And we're going to sacrifice a lot in trusting God's provision, right? So the first thing I want you guys to think about today is to embrace persecution. Embrace persecution, right? The disciples should expect and accept persecution as part of following Jesus, right? And they understand that they will face similar treatment to their master, right? That they should expect similar treatment to what happened to Jesus. Guys, what we do is not normal, right? What following Jesus is totally different from everything else that the world is doing, right? And it's different, and people don't like that. It's uncomfortable, right? But we gotta stand bold, stand firm, and be bold, and embrace this thing. The second thing I want you guys to learn today, to think about, prioritize loyalty to Jesus, right? Commitment to Jesus will require sacrifice, right? They even like in Matthew 10, it was talking about how you could sacrifice your close family, right? This could cost friendships, this could cost relationships, but he's emphasizing that the loyalty to him has to come first. And then the third thing is trust God's provision. Disciples should not fear earthly threats, but trust in God's care, knowing that even small acts of kindness towards others in Jesus' name will be rewarded. So this narrative that was leading up to Matthew 10, right, reveals this compassion for humanity's loss and suffering state. This compassion drives him to empower his disciples, him to empower us, right, to be equipping them in us to extend his ministry, right? This application we went through, it lies in recognizing our own call to compassion and action. Just as Jesus saw the needs of the crowds and responded by sending out his disciples, we're too called to do the same thing around us, in our community, outside of our community, in our homes, right? We're called to see the needs around us and actively participate. And the best part, the most comforting part is, right, we're not alone doing it. Right? In Matthew 10, Jesus sent 12. They're not alone. Even though they were with people, they still weren't alone. Right? He told them, don't worry about trying to find the right words to say. Right? You guys will be speaking through the Spirit. That's comforting. That happened a few thousand years ago, and it doesn't make any difference today. We still have that same Spirit in us. Right? And I know it sounds daunting as we tackle this aggressive idea of discipleship. Right? But it's important that we know that we're not alone doing it. Right? That's comforting. So no dead pandas. Right? John 10:10 says that the thief will come to steal, kill, and destroy, but I have come that they might have life and have it to the full. This world, right, that we're battling daily, right? This thing that's so different from us, right? Well, they're taking those pandas, the lost sheep, and they're just slaughtering them, right? There's lions out there just feasting on the lost, right? Giving them a truth that's false, giving them false hope, right? But it's our job to save those pandas, right? And I know it sounds super silly, right? But I would rather it be silly and catchy than boring and then we forget it, right? No dead pandas. We can't have any dead pandas on our hands, right? So as we leave here today, right, I want you guys to expose the gospel to those who haven't heard it before. Right? We see our circle getting bigger as it started with one, and then our family, right? And then 2 people outside of our family, and now we're at 12. Right? Those 12 were going through the community, right? And they were just doing simple things, talking about Jesus, right? Showing their acts through Jesus. And just imagine what 12 people can do by doing that alone. Imagine how the kingdom can grow by just 12 people just doing that simple task daily. But not only that, but standing firm in the face of persecution, right? Guys, following Jesus isn't an easy trip at all. It's very challenging. We're going to get banged up, and we're going to get some battle scars. We're going to get rejected, right? We're going to get made fun of. We're going to get called out. It's going to be uncomfortable, but that's not a bad thing, right? Good and hard go hand in hand. And so that's my challenge for you guys this week. Just expose those to your gospel who haven't heard it. I pray that relationship counts. Just smiling, or just a small deed, right? A small act of service. It could lead to a lot more than you think. Father, I pray that that's just not just our reminder for this week, but that's our challenge daily. That we just expose the gospel of Jesus everywhere. That what's told in the dark, that we do go proclaim that we do go proclaim your name, that what we learn in here does not stay in here. Father, let us be a church that is seeking after your heart, but also seeking after those who don't know it. Father, allow us to serve in ways that we find uncomfortable. Father, I just pray that you give us that opportunity to share the good news with somebody this week. Father, I pray for our actions, that we become maybe a little more patient at work. Right, that when we go back to work tomorrow, that person that drives us nuts, that we just proclaim the good news to them. Father, I pray that you just give us the boldness to just shout it from the rooftops. about who you are and what you've done for us. Father, let our story and the things that we've gone through and how you've changed us be an example that could lead somebody else to you. Father, help us expand your kingdom this week. In your name, Amen.
Thank you for listening to this week's sermon. If you like this episode and want to get notified each week when we release a new sermon, please subscribe to our YouTube channel or add the Tulip Christian Church podcast to your library. Our hope is that you carry this message with you throughout the week while you spread the word of Jesus Christ.